Hi, everybody. Welcome to WikiTree Bingo. We've got another fascinating bingo for you tonight. I'm really excited because this is a very different project item that we're bringing to you today. I'd like to introduce Jonathan Duke. He is one of the great programmers that works and volunteers for WikiTree on what's called the WikiTree Browser Extension. And we're going to call that WBE from now on, right, Jonathan? So,
Yeah.
a little bit easier. I am thrilled though because there is so much to say about the WBE. It is packed full of goodness, and all of us use it every day. Every profile I think that I do, WBE is touched by it somehow. But what Jonathan picked up on is he's working on the accessibility options for those that need it with the WBE. And we were talking a little bit before we started this live cast about why. And I'm going to ask Jonathan to just kind of repeat some of it again for you guys because it's kind of fascinating. So, why did you pick up and start developing on just the accessibility options for WikiTree?
The extension already had a lot of features, but I was working on just regular genealogy research and managing a few profiles and adding sources, and I realized there were two different formats that people were adding their sources in. People were adding spaces between their sources and adding bold text and things like that that I wasn't adding. And I asked a question on the G2G forum about what the preferred format was, and there was disagreement between people. But what came out of it was that people were doing that a lot of the time because it made their profiles more readable. And so I knew the extension existed. I'd used it a little bit, but being a programmer, I thought that's probably something I could fix really quick. And so I added a few features to just change the spacing around the sources, automatically bold the text, and eventually wandered into requests for reading mode, and the feature ballooned from there. And so
Well,
um,
I'm thankful that not only are you here with Bingo, but also that you worked on these items. I was telling Jonathan that my father-in-law would like to be part of WikiTree, but he does have a little bit of a problem with the readability. Sometimes the sources all kind of squinched together for him, and he can't see the lines straight. I know that in my own project, I have a couple people that have needs beyond what we see a normal profile looking like. And if you do have any special questions or any requests that would make accessibility easier for you in WikiTree, please let us know in the chat because that way Jonathan can either say, hey, I can show you how to do that, or hey, I will take that under advisement and see what we can do about that. Because as you know, WikiTree is free. It's free for all, but we want to make sure all can use it. And I, again, appreciate Jonathan coming in with these accessibility options. I am going to let Jonathan control the screen. I get a break from the mouse, and we're going to let him control the screen here and show us a couple things. So, I guess first things first, could you just briefly tell those that might not know what is the WikiTree browser extension in a nutshell?
it's basically an add-on to your browser that works with the WikiTree pages. So we have a version for Chrome and Firefox already out. We've been working on getting Safari working. There is a version working now, but it's not in the Apple Store yet. But those who are a little more technically inclined could actually download that and install it. So when you install the WikiTree extension, let me see if it'll just come up here. It has many features that you can enable and customize. A lot of them are related to editing profiles, which is great because it makes copying your sources and things like that a lot easier. Readability options itself has a lot of customizations that you can make that we'll discuss.
And I want to pause for just a second. So if you're watching this and you're not sure what WB is, or you kind of have an idea, and you might also use, let's say, Sorcerer. These are
Yeah.
different animals. There are two different extensions that you add to your browser. So just keep that in mind. We're not talking necessarily about anything really to do with Sorcerer tonight. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we did talk with Rob, the gentleman who built Sorcerer. So go back and watch that bingo if you have some questions about Sorcerer. But this is the WikiTree Browser Extension. Okay, sorry about that.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Sorcerer is a great one,
It's fabulous.
and they're all just extensions to Chrome or your browser that make enhancements to the basic WikiTree site.
Very easy to install as well. Very easy to use. The page that Jonathan was at right before in the WikiTree page, it has full instructions. It not only has full instructions, it has full details on every little bit as well. So if you do have a quick question about it, we'll try and answer it. Mostly, though, we're going to focus on the accessibility options.
Right.
So, okay. So what do you have first to show you for accessibility?
Well, first of all, so the initial options that I added were pretty simple for modifying the section of sources at the bottom of the profile, change the spacing and things like that. What I ran into as I developed it is that I had to be able to identify the elements on the WikiTree page to be able to format them. And I ran across a request that Rob, who wrote the Sorcerer extension, had made to have what he called reading mode on the profiles, so that as he was just browsing through, he could focus on the content and not be distracted by all of the extra links and content and elements that are around the page. And so I think what happened is I ended up merging reading mode and accessibility options into a single feature called readability options. So that's where that name came from. So they're intended to basically make it easier for you to read the content on the screen that you're interested in. And the accessibility options are just one section of that. I think what we'll do first is look at the various elements on the profile and how reading mode works, because you can actually switch back and forth between the default view on WikiTree and the reading mode option.
Oh, that would be great. That would also kind of show us really what the before and after is. Let me pause real quick, because this is not a question I expected, but I should have, and I know a lot of people have this question, and Jonathan can answer this so much better than I can. I still really don't understand what a browser extension is. So in general, we call it apps. We tend to call things apps in WikiTree. It's an extension to your browser, meaning it's an add-on. But Jonathan, how would you say it?
It is an add-on to the browser. For instance, Chrome has their web store, and you can go to it and search for extensions that go to many sites. An extension might add a link on a page where you can translate it automatically. Amazon might have an extension that allows you to quickly add stuff to your cart. It's basically just extra code that gets added to websites. You have to give it permission to access WikiTree, so that it doesn't, so that somebody else's extension can't read the pages that you're accessing. But once you give it permission, it can read the content that WikiTree is putting out and modify it.
And then hold that thought, Carol. Carol asked, "What is a browser?" And John gave a browser's the actual item you use to browse the internet. So when we say browser, we're talking about Chrome, Firefox, Safari. I think those are the most popular ones. I don't know if WBE works on something else, but I think that the reason why people might not know what a browser is we're so used to it.
Right.
We just pick it up, and just click a button on our phone, or so basically, if you want to browse the internet, you're using a browser. That's kind of the best way I can explain. And then as far as the extensions, the add-ons, think of it as WikiTree is a vanilla cake, and it's the cake part, and WikiTree Browser Extension and Sorcerer, they're parts that go on top, like the icing, that make that cake taste even better. So that's the best analogy I think I have for that.
Right. And on that WikiTree page, there are links to the app on all the app stores where you can easily go install it.
And you literally just click on it and go. And right. For those of you that are watching and you wonder with Carol about browser, a lot of, Carol did her dissertation on a typewriter with carbon paper. Bless you. I remember, and I'm dating myself, we had to use whiteout on the typewriter if we made a mistake. So for those of you that are younger, you have it so easy. Okay, so let's go ahead then and show, as you mentioned, the two different options for readability, kind of the before and after.
Okay, so one of the ones that I'd basically been using as for all of my testing was Charles Schulz, who did the Peanuts cartoons. His profile has a lot of content on it, and so I found it to be one of the ones that was best suited for the extension. So what I'm going to do here first is I'm going to turn off the extension completely, where we can see what the page looks like without it.
And I love that you picked Charles Schulz. Everybody knows Charles Schulz, so this is cool.
So, if I just bring up his profile to look through, I have to scroll down a bit just to get to his biography. There are images on the side, on both the right side and in the biography, and it just kind of clutters the interface. It has a lot of useful information. Here's our sources, which we'll get to in a minute. I mean, if you're just scrolling through, that's not a very friendly format to read.
It's hard. And, sometimes our older generation, it just mashes together. They can't differentiate those lines. And that green sometimes comes at them a little bit as well.
Mm-hmm. And one person that I've read comments about how they didn't like the way that these citations were formatted, especially like up here at the top of his profile. He has
several.
A date where there's 7 different citation numbers, and so the first thing we would do is try to reduce the amount of clutter on the screen. So if I get up the extension options,
and I should mention too, you don't have to be, hard to read or hard to see, I should say, or, disabled or need the extra functionality or remove the extra functionality to use these options. This might just be the way you like it, but John's going to show us a different way, and you might go, oh, that's pretty cool. I might get less distracted while I'm down that rabbit hole. And I might want to go see. Okay, so what are you going to turn on in the options?
Okay, so in readability options here, right now I have it in the default settings that I like. And so all I've done is turn the extension on. And we're going to go back to Charles Schulz and refresh the page.
And much different.
And you're going to see this reading mode button.
Oh, that's cool. That's great.
That just shows up in the top of the header. Also, now originally, if reading mode wasn't on, the extension didn't modify. It didn't make any modifications to the profile. And as we did more development and testing, requests came in, and you can actually choose on any element whether you want it to show only in reading mode, or never, or always. You have an option for when you want to show. So I'll show that in a minute when I disable some of the things on the side. But just in default reading mode, if I click this button, you're going to watch stuff disappear. And then if you scroll down, now you're just seeing his biography. You can still see the pictures that are embedded in his profile, but you don't see the ones that were off to the side. I even have my formatting. We were talking about the citations. now they're sorted by number and use commas instead of brackets. That's a configurable option that you can choose. It goes all the way down, and sources is collapsed, and it has a button where you can open them. And you look at the format of them now, they're a little more spaced out, and the first element of the sentence is bold text.
Oh, that's amazing. Look what you did. So not only did you bold it so I can instantly say, oh, that's a birth and that's a birth, and then that, but you also gave me those spaces.
Right.
And look how much easier it is to see. Now, could you highlight, just use your mouse around that reading mode button at the top right again? So again, what Jonathan did is click that, but you will not see this on every profile unless you have reading mode selected as on in the WikiTree Browser Extension option.
Right.
We'll go through that again, so don't worry.
Yes. That is one thing we've run into with people testing the extension, is that they would, for instance, they would go into, they'd find readability options and they'd go in here and pick all their settings, but they would never click the button to enable it.
Oh, okay.
So I recently added that. So if it happens to be turned off and you go in here to do your settings, it will tell you have to turn the feature on first, or these won't have any effect.
And you've given us a lot of options, so you can really pick and choose what you decide that you'd like. And the really great thing too is when you're working with the WikiTree Browser Extension option page, which is, you know, the cloudy one right behind us, it's on a separate tab. So you can kind of like go back to a profile, refresh it to see it. If you said, oops, I don't want to see that, go to the tab where this is and change your options. But I'm amazed. I'm totally blown away at how many options you gave us, because you could have just said, okay, click this button and I'll bold something and I'll give you spaces and that's it. But no, you went really deep into this and gave us tons of options here.
Right. I mean, once I started having to identify the elements to do things, it only made sense to make it more customizable. So one that we've really been using is the right column on the profile pages. It takes up a lot of space, and you've probably noticed a lot of times there's like a collaboration section and a research section, and once you've used WikiTree for a week, you don't need those instructions anymore. But they show up on every profile. There's a list of images that shows up on the side that are the same images that are embedded in the biography, so you're seeing them twice.
You're right. Yeah.
So like on images, I made that where you could always hide it.
Well, that's really great to me, because I don't necessarily have a problem, you know, when I got my glasses on, I don't have a problem reading. But boy, having seen double of those photos, I would love to get rid of the right column, and that's great. So where was that? So as soon as we're done with bingo, I'm going there.
Yes. So you can customize all of those things. It's not just in reading mode anymore. You can make it to where you never want to see the images on the side, whether you're in reading mode or not. So if I go back to his profile, you'll notice like up here at the top, you're not seeing the tabs where you can edit the profile. You're not seeing any of that, and you're not seeing the thing on the side. But if I turn reading mode off, those are back, but the right column only has these three elements. There's no images, there's no collaboration section, there's no DNA section. I have it set to hide that if there are no testers.
Oh, that's great.
If there's somebody that has tested, it would show up. For example, if I pull up Elvis, I think he had he has DNA connections. So
Jonathan picked all these profiles and I loved it. When he told me which ones he was going to use, I loved it. Okay, so let's see Mr. Presley here.
So I pull him up and he has DNA connections. So that section shows, but it doesn't show up on Charles Schultz because he doesn't have any.
That's interesting.
If you're not using the extension, you would always see this section, even if it were just giving you instructions about how to add your DNA test to the site. So it just kind of cleans up the interface a little bit.
Now click the option for reading mode, and it shows at the top what it looks like again. it just kind of gives you a little bit more screen space, white space, I should
Mhm.
say, and it gives you a little bit more readability. If you have a smaller screen, this is a good idea as well.
And it'll be a little harder to read if I expand it, but so if I pull it out normal size like I would look at it
Hmm.
without reading mode, you can see the difference.
It's very big difference. That's,
And as far as accessibility, even that background image can be hidden. Well, let's see. Charles Schultz has. You might not find that too easy on your eyes.
there are
If
a
you
lot
can,
of people that wouldn't find that very easy because it kind of moves.
right. So, especially when you scroll.
Yeah, it really moves.
So you can turn that off. Um, let's see, all the way here, hide custom background images. You could do always. You could do in reading mode. I'll do in reading mode just so you can see the difference.
And again, we're in the browser, WikiTree
Yeah,
Browser Extension options under readability options.
right. So when you have the extension installed, you'll see another icon show up beside your address bar. I don't think you can see that on the screen share, but there's another icon that shows up by your address bar, and it has a button you can click, and it will bring up this little window. And readability is kind of tucked down under profile. I made these links where you can get there a little quicker, but show options here would get you to all of these.
And
Um,
let me just pause real quick. So the icon that he just mentioned is the WikiTree globe, is what I call it. The WikiTree globe. That's
mhm.
the orange globe with the family tree that's white. It's up in your browser bar. If you look now, you can probably see it. One click, boom, and you're right at the screen that's cloudy. That's right
Mhm.
behind this one. You're right there, and then all you need to do is scroll down to readability options to get to a multitude of options that you have here. And I will say that I I can see for somebody that might not think they have a need or not really thinking, I don't think I need this readability. If you're doing rabbit holes and you're looking at this pages that look like this over and over again, your eyes you get tired with
Yes,
the colors and the options. So I can see coming it back to more white space, especially if you're digging around WikiTree for rabbit holes.
definitely. It just makes it easier to read and browse through the profiles if you're not trying to edit and you need all those links to conveniently access things. It clears up the content.
And you're not
Um,
losing anything. You don't have to
right.
go back in. Once you set those readability options, you'll probably play around with it. But when you finally get to the version that you like, all you're going to do is just click and toggle this little option at the top right of his screen underneath the help. So you didn't lose anything. If you're like, oh no, how do I get those tabs back? Then you just click that little button and toggle it, I should say, and you get your tabs back. Real
Right.
easy.
Mhm. And by the way, on some browsers, some of the Chrome-based browsers that I've seen, instead of showing the WikiTree globe, if you have
Mhm.
multiple extensions enabled, it'll show a little puzzle piece icon,
Yeah.
and you can click on that, and then you'll see the WikiTree globe. Um, so it kind of varies on what browser you're using as how to get, but it's very easy to pull up the options once it's installed.
And here's a question I think is where we're headed. Is there a transcribe option in the readability area to split the screen?
There's not an option in the that will actually split the browser window. Um, and I don't know if I can share two windows at once to show you, but I do want to show you a comparison between two profiles. Um, but no, there's not actually an option for split screen in the extension that I know of right now. Um,
Now, yeah,
I think
unfortunately,
somebody had asked a question about the citations a minute ago, and
was it that about the commas versus brackets?
yes,
Yeah.
and so I was going to look that up real quick. Um,
And then right after we answered this question, we're going to play our first bingo game. So if everybody wants to have their bingo cards handy, that would be great.
So this will kind of lead into the accessibility part, but the inline citations section here, you can even choose to not show them at all if you wanted to, or only show them in reading mode. I always show them because they're pretty useful. But citation format will let you pick the default, which has brackets, or no brackets at all with commas, brackets and commas, brackets and spaces without commas. You can customize that. And also you can choose the font size. So I have mine smaller, but you might want yours to be larger. And if I change, let's say I just change that to not have brackets, to have commas, and we're going to add some extra spacing between them. If I go back to Charles Schultz and I refresh, now the citation numbers are much bigger and more spaced out.
Okay, show us Schultz's screen.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah. Oh, much bigger, and the spaces as well. So that's fabulous.
So so that kind of is one way we can help with the accessibility.
That's really great. So if those little ones, or if they all smush together for you, you can go back and just make them larger and have the spaces and the. You've given us so many options. I love this. This is really great. Now, what is clean up the citations?
I might would have to find a profile that was a good example of that, but some people would add spaces after the period before a citation, and some wouldn't.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
By default, the citations I think are underlined. So I think in that situation, it basically makes sure that they're spaced out correctly and not underlined, so you can actually see the numbers better.
And sometimes that is tough when they're underlined and you've got a little bit of extra, like the little dot for the periods and mini commas. Sometimes it's just a little difficult even for me to see. Right. And I have to agree with you, Stephen. It really is amazing the difference between the two. It's pretty interesting to see the differences. Okay, I'm going to share my screen real quick so we can do the first bingo card. And if you were here earlier, there's no bingo trivia. It's all straight bingo cards. So Jonathan said he did not want to do trivia today. I don't know why. Trivia is fun. But anyway, if you have your bingo card, let me bring it up. Okay, so what we're going to do for bingo, for those of you who have not played or need a refresher, we're going to do horizontal, diagonal, or vertical. There's a free space. Go ahead and click that with your mouse now. If you accidentally hit a space that you didn't mean to, just click it again with your mouse and it'll remove that little splotch, is what I like to call it. The first person that gets bingo is the one who gets it all the way across, vertically, diagonal, horizontally, and the first person who types bingo in the chat. Hold on, Carol, we'll show you that right after bingo, and Betty will answer your question as well right after bingo. I promise. I've got those on hold to ask. So if you guys are ready with your card, remember whoever gets bingo is also the person that says bingo in the chat first and doesn't miss it by 2 to 3 seconds like Stephen has done twice now. And if you've won in the past 6 months, you are not eligible to win until a full 6 months has gone by. Okay, these are words Jonathan gave us. So collapse. What does that mean to us today, Jonathan?
So collapse, there are options in the readability feature to collapse the sources section, the research notes section. It gives you that little toggle button.
And some of you probably have seen that already. I know, right. I think it comes default almost, doesn't it?
On the default setting in reading mode is that the sources section is collapsed, so that you can read the profile, and if you click the toggle button or you click on one of the numbers for the citations, it will automatically expand and jump to the link, but otherwise you won't see all that at the bottom of the page by default.
I just want to point out, Kathy's right. Do not close your card, because some people have won in the past 6 months and they enjoy playing along, but they'll say bingo, keep playing. That means keep playing. So don't close your bingo card. And Carol cracks me up. The definition of collapse, pass out. Okay, family. As far as the WBE, what does family mean?
So we were talking about the elements that go in the right column.
Okay.
There is another feature, I didn't write it, but there's a feature that will let you move the family list or the categories over to the right column. So we have the option to hide that column or to hide all the elements in it. If you have that other one on and you tell it to hide the right column, then you won't see the family or the categories. So a recent option that we added was only hide the right column if it's empty.
And I like that feature. That's a great idea. I never would have even thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, profile. I think everybody that's with WikiTree, the very first thing you learn is create a profile, and the second thing you learn is add a source. But profile. So I think we all know what profile is. Printer friendly. Now this was a big ticket item for WBE, wasn't it?
Yes. So if you've ever tried to print just by going to the print option on your browser on WikiTree, you get all of this stuff that reading mode hides. But there was already an option for printer friendly. I made some modifications to try to make it a little easier to use. But basically, it will hide all of the elements and only show the header and the biography. There are a few customizations you can make to it, but it makes it a lot better for printing just the biography.
Tabs, all the tabs and all the miscellaneous stuff in printer friendly mode, those are gone.
Yeah, by default it shows up in the profile menu at the top. So like I have Charles Schulz up, so it'd be on that where it shows Schulz 482, and you scroll down and there's a printer friendly bio menu option. There is an option in the extension to make it take over your browser print option, so that even if you just go to file print, it will automatically do the bio, but that would change the behavior that people might be expecting, so we made it optional.
And it's sticky. We're not talking about homemade caramel.
So you might have noticed when I was demoing that the WikiTree header didn't move from the top of the page. So there are a couple of features where we have sticky header, so that keeps the search box and the menu at the top of the page even when you scroll down on the profile.
I love that feature.
There is a similar feature on the edit screen, so that the toolbar above the bio window doesn't hide. So if you scroll all the way down, that toolbar will stop at the top, and where you can still click the buttons.
Because how many of us have gone to edit and we're scrolling down and we're like, shoot, I need to add something. I need to add a sticker or template or I need to do a category. I need to look to see if there's a category. So I love that as well. Scroll, that's kind of what we just talked about, right?
Right. And there is an option also, if you've ever clicked on a citation link, it'll jump to the bottom of the screen immediately. Yes. And for some people that might be too jarring. There is an option in the extension for smooth scrolling. So when you click the link, it will glide down to the bottom instead of jump immediately.
Highlight.
Right. There are features now. Ian was working on one that hopefully will be released soon, where you can change the colors. This is kind of related to accessibility. So you can change your background colors on different elements. You can change the link colors, and like visited links can show up in a different color than links you haven't clicked yet.
I know in our project we had a little too much fun with that. So if anybody looks at WikiTree Browser, I would say in the past week, it might be 2 weeks. I don't know when the last update, but I would say about the past week, and you're noticing at the top, you now have purplish, or some people they call it pink, but purplish menu items for my WikiTree, things like that. This is part of that update. Do not change the colors on your computer. Just go to the browser options, the WikiTree browser options. Okay, in category.
Yeah, I think one person added a specific feature to do visited links, and they were a bright pink, purpley color.
That was me.
But Ian had already started one that lets you customize more than just visited links, and so I think they're merging those for the next release.
Yeah, and I'd like to say if Ian is watching, I know he'll never admit to it because he's not one for live broadcasts here. But if he's watching, thank you for helping me escape out of that hot pink purple. Because I did contact him.
And that is we have the stable release of the extension, which is we do it about monthly. They make a new release, but there is a preview version that if you want to see the latest and greatest that we're working on as we make an update or add a new feature, it will go to the store and come out immediately. And occasionally there will be a feature out there that doesn't quite behave the way people expect it to, and that helps us catch those issues. But that sometimes they can catch you by surprise. So
yes, it did. It was quite interesting and hard to read. Categories.
So categories, there, like I said before, there's a feature that actually will move those to the right sidebar with the G2G posts and DNA testers and all that stuff. And they normally show up at the bottom of your screen. And you can move it. You can choose to move it to the top, the right side, hide them. Readability options lets you hide them in reading mode or always. And so there's quite a few options to categorize where those show up and what they look like now.
And if you have been with WikiTree for a while, like long term, your heart was broken when WikiTree had the categories kind of up top before the bio, and then they moved it down at the bottom. And I was one of them. I got used to it, but now we have the options to move them back up, and life is good again. Okay, DNA testers, and we kind of talked about this. This is where you're going to remove that column if you are not interested in it, but also if there are no DNA testers, it doesn't show.
Right.
If you have the option selected.
Yes. If you have that set to hide when there's no DNA testers, then that section won't show up. And I mean, DNA, that was sort of the first thing that drew me to WikiTree when I realized that people could put in their information and it would calculate other people on WikiTree that are related to you and how you may connect. So if you haven't done DNA testing and used that's a great feature that we have. But if there's a profile that doesn't have any, then there's no reason to show that section. So.
And I'll just point out one more time again that everything we're talking about pretty much here, you have to do a kind of almost two selections. First, you got to turn on readability options, and that's off the WikiTree Browser Extension options menu. Then you got to dig into those options as well and start playing around with them. See what you like. You're not going to break it. Click on some things and say, I want it. I don't want to see this. I do want to see this. I don't want to see that. Just play around with it. You're not going to break it, and see what you like, because everybody's view will be different than somebody else's. And I see, no way, Stephen won bingo. That is so awesome. Just so all of you know, the Stephen won, I think, like literally the first day that we did bingo, that we brought this program to WikiTree. And he's waited 6 months to win again. And I want to say, and Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, you've had bingo almost every time since, but missed it by seconds, by just a few seconds. So I'm thrilled, Stephen, that you won bingo again. Congratulations. I know you know, but I'm going to tell you anyway. So anybody wins a prize with WikiTree, you're going to actually contact our foresight. You're going to contact Awen, and she's going to give you the information on how to claim your prize from the WikiTree store. Really awesome deal. It's up to $30 for a WikiTree branded product. They got all kinds of stuff in there too. And this is our 15th year anniversary. So I think those shirts have been updated and in the store too. If not, ask Awen and she'll get in touch with the store and see what she can do. That's fabulous, Stephen. Congratulations. I'm really happy that you were able to get it. And maybe, just maybe, you will get the pair to the infamous bingo mug that we have here. Okay, so let me bring up the screen for Jonathan again. In this part, we talked a lot about readability And are we going to talk about accessibility now?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll go to, let me get up a profile here. I'll point out before I get into the accessibility, I set up a few different options on my features just so you can see. This is an example.
I got a quick thing though. Can I interrupt you real quick? I'm so sorry. I just realized too. We had a lot of questions, so let me right before bingo, and I promised I would answer. You would answer. Can you use this during editing and adding new people? And I think which means the readability mode.
For readability, no. There are a lot of options in the browser extension for editing profiles. Ian has an auto bio feature that a lot of people have been using. There's a bio check. There's AGC, WikiTree Plus. So there are a lot of features that do help with editing, but the readability options aren't related to that.
So, but if I create a new from scratch or connect, let's say the connect-a-thon's coming up, and I have readability on, if I have it toggled up at the top, when I do the new person, when I connect to them, it's going to look the same as it has for the past couple months. That doesn't your readability options really doesn't change that part of the program.
Right.
Right.
It pretty much these only apply to person profiles, free space profiles, and the category pages.
And now, can you make this particular one into reading mode real quick?
Yes.
And then can you click on? Well, here's a good question. I'm glad you brought this up. Now, what happens if I want to edit? I see a typo and I want to edit.
You can just unclick reading mode and
go to edit. Okay, so I think Betty, that answers your question. Let me know if it doesn't. Carol, how do I access the readability on my page? So same thing, just the reading mode. If it was your profile,
that toggle button should show up at the top on any profile where it can be used. It does not show up in edit mode, so it's only when you're viewing a profile, either a space, person, or category.
And keep in mind, you're only going to see that special toggle if you went into the WikiTree Browser Extension options. And I'm just going to do the generic. And some of you may have the orange WikiTree globe, but look for the puzzle piece where you type in a website. Look for the puzzle piece all the way on the right side. Mine happens to be gray. I don't know what everybody else's could be. I think most are gray unless you change your browser colors. But that puzzle piece, then go look for the WikiTree Browser Extension, and there's an options. That'll bring you to where you need to scroll down to find the readability options. And you need to toggle those on. And again, everything that we have here is on that main WikiTree Browser Extension page. I'll drop that as well. But just so everybody knows, that toggle under the help will not be there unless you've gone to your WikiTree Browser Extension options and then scroll down to the readability options and toggle it on. It's set for default off, I think, right, Jonathan?
I think the default was off. When I first made it, I didn't want it to drastically change the format of everybody's pages. So you do have to enable it.
And somebody go, oh, what's this? What's this? I didn't see this. I don't know about. Okay, so I've got 3 more quick questions. Sometimes I struggle with, is that when I have inline citations while editing, it's very hard to tell what the text is and what the citation is. And we're talking about while editing. And I think Jonathan's already mentioned this does not work readability mode in editing, but maybe take that with you and think about a solution for that. I know what Shelley means. Sometimes it's just all in there, you know.
Yeah, but that main block where you put the wiki text is unformatted black and white, and it
Yeah.
just kind of all mashes together. It would be nice if it had some formatting to it.
And I will tell you, if you ever get an error that says missing a ref tag, it is tough looking for it as well, especially if you've like, okay, Carol, how about a training on doing those abbreviated sources that are 5 times in one profile? It makes me crazy trying to figure it out. I think that's what we were kind of talking about as well just now with Shelly. I think the abbreviated sources. Oh, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about inline sourcing. Okay, Carol, we'll keep that in mind. And I am going to actually pass this suggestion over to Miss Betsy Coe, who does Q&A twice a month on WikiTree. So I'll keep that in mind and pass that over to her because that's an inline citation
Right.
concern. Okay, last one. Oh, this is a good one, Liza. I am trying to test the extension for iPad. How do I turn it on? So we're talking to our Safari folks. Is it available for Safari?
There is a test version for a Safari, but it's not in the Apple Store right now. To get it on your Mac without installing it manually, you have to be, I think you have to use a Test Flight app, and Jamie is the one that sets that up. There is a page here I'll go to, and I'll put the link in the chat that you can use that has instructions for how to do that and who to contact.
And if you could show me on your screen, I'm thinking. Hold on, Carol. Hold on one second. I'm gonna let Jonathan finish this for the Safari people, and then I'm gonna show you as well. And I want to thank a couple of you, Kristen. Thank you, Kristen from the Appalachia Project, offered to kind of walk you through how to get to that options as well. Jonathan, do you mind if I remove your screen for just a second?
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to bring up mine real quick, Carol, just to show. Let's see. It's being a little slow, so give me just a second here. That I bring up the whole screen or just part of it? No, that's what I thought. Give me just a second. Let me stop. Okay, and if you guys just ignore my messy bar here, but what I do, and I'm going to take Jonathan's advice. Some of you have this thing up here. It's the WikiTree globe, and I know it's tough to see. This is about as much as I can expand it. This is a globe right here, but there's right to the right of it is a puzzle piece. If you click on that puzzle piece, it will bring down a menu option. And on that menu option, it says WikiTree Browser Extension, and go from there and it'll give you the options. So I would suggest you just go straight for the puzzle piece. Wouldn't you, Jonathan? Everybody has a puzzle piece pretty much for Chrome.
I think so.
Yeah. So I would do that. Now, again, let me refresh and let me bring your screen up. If you have Safari, is this in Safari? In the version that you're testing for the Safari browsers?
The Safari version, I think there's some sort of issues getting Apple to approve them to publish it. But we do have a version that's available for testing. And this page right here, I linked to in the chat, gives instructions for, you can contact Jamie to get, if you want, on the Test Flight app. If you have a Mac with I think you got to have, there's a couple of restrictions. I think your Mac has to have the new Apple chip. And there's also a version for iPad if you have iOS that you can get on Test Flight. But she has to add your account to that where you can automatically download the extension.
And is your readability in the testing?
Yes.
Okay. And I think we might have figured out part of the problem for Carol, maybe. I'm not sure that she just did that, and there's no listing for WikiTree Browser Extension. So, Carol, how about if I shoot you an email after this and walk you through? Because it sounds like it's a possibility you don't have it installed. And that might be where a lot of the confusion is coming from. So we'll see. We can get you all hooked up. I'll send you an email with screenshots, or we'll do a Zoom and get you all hooked up. Okay, let's move on. We've got about 15 minutes, and we still got a second bingo card to get through. So let's have Jonathan show us some of the accessibility options.
Okay. Let me pull this back up. Okay, so this was a profile I was working on. I was going to point out moving the family relationships over to the sidebar is an option. I think Ian did this feature. It highlights them.
I like the color coding as well. So if if you're not color blind, then this coding might work out easier too for you to automatically pinpoint male, female.
Right. And everything in the extension, you can enable or disable the feature if it does something you don't like. So you're not going to mess anything up trying the options out. But let me turn off the extension and we'll show you what it looks like. I'm gonna compare two profiles. This is what started it all with the accessibility options. So I was working on this profile and I had a lot of sources and I was doing them the normal evidence explained format. There is an option in the Sorcerer extension where you can choose to do that format or not. I had done that not realizing it, and that's the format I was using, but I think the default selection does add, like it would add bold text in front of this that would say census or death, and that's what I was seeing on a lot of the other profiles. So looking at that, it's not very readable.
Yeah.
Then I ran across this other profile that somebody had done, and they were spacing theirs out, adding 1857 marriage, 1860 census, and the reasoning that they gave for that was to make it more readable.
And you know what's interesting about that? They were hand formatting that.
Yes, they're hand formatting it. They're manually adding spaces between the lines to make it do that. So, if somebody didn't like that format, that's kind of up to the manager of the profile how they format things. So I was trying to figure out if there was a way to provide that formatting without you having to do it manually, so that people could choose to have it formatted that way or not. So let's see. Too many windows open.
Oh, Carol, then you're going to love this. If you're hand formatting it, we're going to get you hooked up. We're going to get you hooked up with the WBE, and we're going to get you hooked up because Jonathan has a tool that all you got to do is put on an option and boom. And this is it. Carol brings up a good point. Carol was doing this manually for the profiles that she manages. And if you're like, well, I'm doing it, it sure would be nice if somebody else was doing it because I can't read it. Now Jonathan's got the answer. So again, he's going to go back into that options and under readability options.
Right. So, and these are basically at the top of the list. So the first thing you'll see is adjusting the spacing between list items. So I like it at 75% because they're a little bit spaced out, but it doesn't make it too far. But like you were talking about, somebody that, like your father that has trouble seeing, you can do 200% spacing, and you can even tell it to do it to all list items and not just the ones in the sources section. So if I do just that,
handy too, because sometimes we do lists of children or siblings. That's a good idea.
Right. So now if I come back to my original profile,
Look at that.
there's the sources section.
And he did not hand format that. He did not go into edit, hit bold, cover it, hit bold, and space, 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 space. If you got a lot of sources, it's a lot of work.
Yes.
It just easy peasy. And like Harold does, for her profile, she might do this, but if she's reading somebody else's, like I know for a fact, Carol was reading my grandmother's last week, helping me out with something. And it wasn't spaced like this. It was all jumbled together. Now it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I can switch back and forth between the two different profiles, and now you can't really tell that they're formatted differently.
You can't. And
even on the one that had the bold text, you'll see the option. Let's see, remove bold labels and asterisks from the beginning of sources. So if I turn that off and I go to hers, you'll still see her labels. But if I turn them off, it will highlight 1860 federal census instead as the bold text, so that you can't even tell the difference between the two formats.
And again, he's not messing in the edit of another person's work. He's not going in and bolding everything and changing for, because I know that people, Jonathan and I talked about this a little bit beforehand. People like their styles, and that's okay. WikiTree has some basic rules: the biography, research notes, sources, things like that. And we do want sources, and everybody kind of has their different ways of doing it. I have a member of my project. I love what she does. She takes all the census records and she actually puts them down together below, and then she'll put the birth and the death and the find a grave, maybe even military together. And I like that. It's a little different than what this is. But the thing is when you go into these options for readability and you toggle the way you want to see the source displayed, we're not changing the way that the formatting is on this person's profile at all. We're not touching it. We're not going in edit. We're not touching it. And I think this is a good time to also mention Shelley's question. If you have the bold heading on sources, will other people see it that way or just you? This is an individual item. I mean, Shelley, you and I could have the exact same options set up in readability, and that way we would see it the same. But I can tell you, for example, Joe, my next door neighbor, might not ever come in here and toggle these, and he'll see them however the profile manager left them. Right. And chances are that profile manager left them all together, probably not bolded, and he may have used inline sourcing or he may not have. No, great question, Joku. Will this only work for U.S. sources?
It's not really based on any particular format. It's just looking for punctuation or something in quotes. You may run across a particularly formatted source that doesn't do it exactly how you would expect. But if your source starts with something that's in quotes, something with a colon after it or a period, or a link, that's what's going to get bolded. The intent is give it a little bit of bold text at the beginning so that you can see where one source stops and the next one starts.
And kind of pick and choose what the source actually is as well. Because sometimes if you didn't have the bold and you did have the spaces, you could have 3 marriages in a row or something like that. But you could pick and choose and see which one you want to see. I mean, I really, really like it. And I think Carol has a good suggestion for you and your family, your wife. You should move to Tucson. I'm gonna suggest that Carol might be thinking that you can help her install the WBE
right.
on her computer as well. Carol, I was telling you, he's not that far from you. I'm further away from you than he is, so he is closer.
But we can probably get that solved without having to travel to Tucson.
That's funny. So I just love the options, you could have literally just said, hey, bold it and put a space, but you gave everybody options for what they want to see, how they want to see it. And remember, you're not messing with anybody's profile. You're never going into their edit and doing everything. And if you're like Carol, you're doing it manually, that's even more challenging and difficult. All right, let me throw in, we're going to get ready and do the second bingo card real quick. And guys, I knew we'd go a little bit long on this one because this is just too much good stuff. Every time I have you guys in, your programmers, we always go long because you guys bring us awesome information that we don't usually think about or see. Sometimes we'll go up into that WikiTree browser extension and we don't know what it is. So sometimes we'll mess with it and sometimes we won't. And I will tell you also, you can't break it. You really can't. So go in and again, click, choose options, decide what you like. I know I do that for Sorcerer, for example. I just was in Sorcerer today playing around with Rob's new feature for family search, the build all citations. Okay, bingo card. Everybody get your bingo card up. And again, horizontal, diagonal, vertical. Go ahead and click that free space now, giving you an easy start to go. If you have won in the past 6 months or today, you cannot win again for another 6 months. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go a little bit quicker through this, guys, because we are running long. Contrast. What does that mean for the WBE?
So there is a dark mode option if you like your background to be dark and your text to be white. There are options like that to customize how it looks on the screen. And this the custom styles feature that Ian has been working on that lets you change the color of the text if you don't like the link colors, if they're too dark or too light, or you don't like the background colors on the pages. It kind of gives you some options to customize that to make it a little better for your eyes.
And there is a fabulous button for those changes called reset.
Yeah.
Trust me on this.
Really?
Accessibility, and that's kind of what we're talking about. So I want to point out again that Jonathan's come to us today and he's worked with the WBE for a couple months now, specifically on helping with these accessibility options for those that might need it. I can tell you, I say those that might need it, but I love them. I can see a need to get rid of some of the stuff on the sidebar, especially if there's, for example, no DNA testers, then remove it. I love those options. So you don't actually have to have a special need to use these options. But I'm going to put this out here and kind of warn Jonathan a little bit in advance. If you have a disability or a special need that hasn't been addressed yet, please, let us know. And a good way to let us know as well is if you go into the WBE extensions options, you'll see all the developers that worked on a particular item are linked to the right, and Jonathan's name is there. So keep that in mind as well. Okay. Margaret, you're just in time though if you want to play bingo. I will go back a little bit. We had contrast and accessibility. Okay, so white space, and we kind of talked about that with Charles Schultz profile. We showed you that with the readability options, if you remember, you had to toggle them on and select it. So when you see the tabs now and you see a lot of the text over on the right-hand side in the different colors, if you change it, and then also toggle on the readability options, you see so much more white on the screen. And I can honestly, this is a perfect option if you are doing rabbit hole research and looking at a lot of profiles, because sometimes those colors and that extra tabs and text affect you and your eyesight. Okay, declutter. I think we just explained that one too, didn't we? With that, and that's a much more pleasant word than saying, "Well, we're just going to remove or get rid of." So we're going to declutter the profile a little bit, and you said also it can declutter some space pages as well.
Yes, it works on space pages the same way. They don't have quite as many elements as person pages, but as far as the right column and hiding things like the comments at the bottom and the header at the top, it does make those easier to read as well.
And keep in mind, we're not deleting it. It's not
Right.
going away. All you got to do is just toggle that button under the help and it all comes back. And we did talk about dark mode with the contrast. And I know that this was something that Ian worked on that was giving him a little bit of fits at the very, very beginning. And he worked it out really nicely. I tested it out with my tablet a lot because sometimes I will use my tablet late at night and I don't want that bright screen because it affects you trying to go to sleep a little bit later on. In the dark mode, it was fabulous on my tablet. List spacing, and we talked about that as well. Actually, Jonathan showed us that if you list the sources down below, you have so many different options: comma, no comma, brackets, no brackets, a combination, multiple spaces as well, so you can see. But I really like this that you said that it'll pick up the list that are in the bio too. So if you use children, for example, is a good example. Another example that I used recently last week, I was doing a profile for a vice admiral in the U.S. Navy, and I was listing all of his awards and commendations. And sometimes military items kind of blur and kind of look the same when you're using abbreviations and things like that. So that's another way that it just gives a little bit more space for those that might have trouble seeing it or if it merges all together. And I agree. So, Jonathan, here's your next mission. If you choose to accept it, we need that declutter button for our house. That would be perfect.
You can see my office.
But if you do the declutter button for our house, we could WikiTree more.
Right.
So line breaks, we did just talk about that as well. So when we were talking about, line spaces, the line breaks kind of give you more space in between. Is that what this is doing?
There are some sources that actually put the BR tags in there that make it break the line automatically. I think sometimes people will put like a census record with a list of the family members, something like that. So one of the options on the sources section is to take those out, so it compresses the source back up in one sentence. But customizable as to how you want it to be visible. So.
And this is really. It's really what you just said. It's really perfect the way you said it because it is customizable the way you want it. You don't necessarily have to have, again, a disability or special needs. Sometimes you just don't want to see the extra information because it might affect your eyes. And the background was a really good example of that too. Okay,
Right.
Standards. And I think what I'm going to let you say it just a minute, but I do want to point out everything that we're talking about today, removing the tabs, for example, things like that, this is still a standard on every profile of WikiTree. We're not deleting it and removing it. And we still are keeping to the standards of you do need to add, a date, a name, a location, and sources for standards. But I fear that sometimes people might think with this that, oh, you're deleting it, you're removing those tabs, you're removing that DNA information. We're not. We're just hiding it. But what was the purpose for this word for bingo?
So being a programmer and a data person, you want all the profiles to be formatted as similarly as possible, and they have standards they've discussed for how sources are supposed to be formatted and citations are supposed to be done. So if you're adding blank lines between your lists and bold text that is for a purpose like readability, then your profiles aren't going to look like the profiles that another manager does. So my goal was to make it to where you could follow the standard formats, and then the extension would do the work for you on how it's displayed and let you pick what your preferences are.
And that's really great because no more hand formatting. Let the extension do the work for you. And references.
Right. So somebody talked about the inline references earlier, and so originally the Ian had a feature that would collapse that references section, and I extended it to do the entire sources section because some people don't use the inline citations. They just do a bulleted list with the sources. And so whether you use inline citations or a bulleted list, they all work the same way now. And if you've noticed on some profiles, when they have the links to jump back up into the, especially on Charles Schultz, you can go back and look at his, all of his sources have like a 1.0, 1.1 that jumps back up to each section in the profile, in the bio where that source was used. You can hide those in the source options on the readability.
Because there are sometimes as you go through WikiTree, you're looking really at the top part. You're not necessarily looking at all of the sources to scroll down until you need to really research that profile. Sometimes you just need to go, oh, this person's in England and I'm looking for somebody who was born and died in California. And you just don't need all the sources. So the default, I think we said was to hide, but there's a toggle and there's also an option. Okay, usability tweaks.
That's another feature that Ian has worked on, and it's not part of readability, but certain people have asked for just random things like, can you make it automatically put the cursor in the search box at the top of the page?
Oh.
There is a tweak for there's a printing issue on Windows 10 Chrome. That makes the page break after the header, so there's just blank space, and then the bio is on the second page. If you have problems like that, check on that extension because it has options you can enable that some of them could apply to accessibility as well.
And we have a bingo winner. So let me go ahead and bring this page down. Congratulations, Kristen. That is so cool. We've got, I'm going to say it just like I always give Mags a hard time on the roundup. We have an Appalachian winning the bingo mug. So congratulations to you. You're going to email Eowyn, and she's going to let you know she's going to give you a link to the store. But if you already know, to shortcut it if you already know, like, for example, you want the all black, make sure to say all black because it comes in different black and white, I think black and blue, something like that. But if you already want the all black bingo mug, say all black bingo mug tour. I won the bingo with Jonathan or with the WBE, and she will get you all hooked up. It's really great that you guys have joined us as well, because this is probably one type of topic that we need Jonathan here to not only demo, but explain as we go through things. So I guess I think we might have run out of time. So if you have a question, now's the time to drop it. You've got a minute or two to drop the question and we'll try and answer. And Jonathan, do you have anything you want to show before we end the show?
Just download the extension and try a lot of the features. There are even features for previews on links and a lot of things. Let me see if I can share that. So you've seen the pop-ups for person profiles, but we even have them now for space pages. We have on citations, you can get a preview without having to scroll down to the bottom of the page.
I love that. That is such a great feature there too.
So, there's been a lot of work on these. Some of them that already existed, we've been trying to improve them. Ian's even been working on one for access keys. So if you want to use keyboard shortcuts to enable and disable things or jump to a certain function, that's in there now. So there's a little bit something for everybody in the extension. If you can download it, like you said, you can't break it. It's just going to change the way things work, and you can turn off any feature that you want to. And we're on G2G. We're on Discord. You can comment on the WBE page. You can go to our profiles directly and ask a question. So.
And I will tell you that I have not met a programmer that works with WikiTree that has not only been extremely fast, but extremely kind and helpful in answering a question. I think I've reached out to just about all of you, and you guys are so quick and you answer my question. And you, even when I'm in the wrong and I'm like, well, it's doing this. I know Ian found something, goes, no, it's actually doing it right. It's just a different way. But he came about it in a really nice way, so I didn't feel so stupid. So I appreciate all you guys. And remember, guys, these guys are volunteering their time to make our life better. If you've been with WikiTree for a long time or for a while, I don't know how we survived without the WikiTree browser extension, all the options, and then also Sourcer. Some of you still use some features on B. So this is really fantastic that these people have brought this technology to WikiTree to make it easier for us to use, and what I think is time saving. That gives us a little bit more time to spend where they can't help us as much. And that would be the biography, actually writing the biography and putting it in. They can help us get the sources in. They can help us read the pages. They can do all these tweaks for us, which are so good and fabulous, to give us a little bit of extra time to work on the biography. Were you part of also the ad system, and you're working on you said every month you guys are working on tweaks and items for the WBE, right? So
Yeah.
if you have something that you'd like to recommend, reach out to them. If you have anything that is related to accessibility, definitely reach out to Jonathan and let him know. Multiple ways, Discord, his page. If you go up to the options page as well, his name is there under the WikiTree browser options. It'll link right to his page. I just want to say thank you again for coming on board. I asked Jonathan, reached out, and gave me great ideas for the accessibility to use. I hope that everybody enjoyed it. And more importantly, I hope there is no fear about going into this page that he's showing here and playing around with it, and enjoy it, have fun with it. And I guess we'll call that a wrap as well. We do have, I call her Miss IT. We do have Jamie coming back to talk to us about how to get involved with programming, how to volunteer, what's on the plans for WikiTree as far as the IT's parts and the apps are concerned. So she's coming to us next month. So look at the bingo schedule for that as well, because we are not quite done with you guys. And by popular request, we have Greg Clark coming back in 2 weeks. He's coming back on bingo. He has actually created a new app for us that he's going to demo as well. And if you have any questions, reach out to us, Carol. I'm going to send you an email, and we're going to get you the WB extension, because you're going to be amazed by it. Okay, and I don't think we saw any questions either, so I think we're all set then with that. So Jonathan, thank you so much. I'm positive we'll see you again. So when you start to work on some more great options and everything, let me know, and we'll have Jonathan come back and give us another demo. I want to say thanks to everybody that's watching live, and if you're watching this afterwards, thank you for hanging in there with us throughout this bingo. We appreciate you watching. Bye, guys.
Bye.